Hi, well, thanks for the introduction. I'm Paul Kennedy and I'm a painter here at South Block. I've been with Wasps for 14 years. I started off at East Campbell Street, where there is an exhibition tonight. If anybody wants to go there, there's lots of really amazing artists there. And then I moved here in 2011 when we did the renovation, and I've been here ever since. When I was asked to do the talk, Living Off Your Practice, I thought, well, what will I really talk about? Because everything is relevant over the last 14 years, because when you go to art school, no one teaches you how to be a commercial artist, how to make money off your practice, and so you're kind of left to find it all out for yourself. So when I came back to Glasgow from Edinburgh, I didn't really know what to do. I had a hook, and that hook was the Glasgow Print Studios had scouted me out at my degree show, because my degree show was mainly silkscreen printing. So they offered me free membership, and so that was the first thing I thought, well, that's something I can do when I go back to Glasgow, is I can just start printing in Glasgow Print Studios. And I got involved with the art company Impact Arts, and I did a course there called the Artist Mentoring Programme, which was essentially a teacher training version of how to become a community artist. I didn't want to be an art teacher. I was very adamant about that. So this seemed kind of quite up my street, making money from doing community art basically. And when I did the Artist Mentoring Programme, they offered us free studio space. So it was a kind of win-win situation. I could do this course, I could get free studio space. That combined with the Glasgow Print Studios and continuing my practice of screen printing there, just kept the creative juices flowing. And so once I kind of got back into Glasgow in the swing of things, I was kind of finding direction all the time, because you start networking and you start to kind of get a sense of what goes on in the art scene. But you can't live off, like doing volunteering work and shadowing other artists. You still have to get a job. So I had a wee bar job at the side of that, which was enough just to kind of get art materials, and within the space of a year I basically became a community artist, and I started getting workshops all over the place. The Artist Mentoring Programme had taught me how to do things like costing and planning, proposals, and mural painting, and applying for funding, and all these things that you kind of need to know. And as I continued doing all this community artwork, I got my first studio in Wasps. So this was then 2005. But I still was kind of unclear what direction to go and how to actually become an established painter. So I started applying to things like the RGI, submitting my work into various kind of platforming exhibitions, Paisley Art Institute, Royal Scottish Academy, and started approaching galleries. And the galleries, they're very interested in your work, but they want you to have a body of work, and you can turn up with a really good painting or a couple of photographs, but they want to see a body of work, which was something I didn't really have. Also, I didn't quite understand the whole concept of a commission, and I used to find it really unfair that you had to give a gallery commission, and I didn't understand why. So there was quite a few kind of, sometimes I would put paintings in and they either wouldn't sell, or if they did sell, I would be, trying to get my head around paying whatever the commission was, 40 or 50%. But slowly I started to realise how it worked and realised why the galleries have to charge a commission. They've got all their expenses to pay and stuff. But alongside that, I found that I had this work building up and I wanted it to be out there. and I wanted to have exhibitions, but I wasn't established enough to have exhibitions. So I started making my own exhibitions, and that consisted of hiring out a shop space, and then for like 2 weeks, and then manning it every day myself. I had an exhibition on a canal boat at the Falkirk Wheel. I had an exhibition next door in the 13th Note in the exhibition space there, and there's also the Pentagon Business Centre just next to the Kingston Bridge, and I had an exhibition there. And alongside all this, I still felt I wasn't really getting anywhere. So in 2009, I entered a big competition called the Aspect Prize, and the Aspect Prize is no longer, but at the time it was a really big competition, and I won a finalist place with 3 other artists. So basically we were awarded £5,000 each, and then given 6 months to be creatively free, not worry about making any money, and then come together in January 2010, and there would be an overall winner who would then win a further £10,000. So this was really good for me, because I could then just stop doing the community art, focus completely on the painting, and essentially have the same thing that I got for 4 years at art school, which was being creatively free, but this time I really appreciated it. So I did what they asked us to do, and I created a body of work. I didn't win, but the prestige of this was brilliant, and there was lots of media coverage, and when the galleries saw the winner and the runners-up, they started being interested in all of us. So I went from galleries being, we quite like your paintings, to we want you. But then the problem that happened was every single gallery came at me at once, and I'm really bad at saying no. So I kind of said yes, 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 yes to everyone, and kind of confused everyone and confused myself, and all of a sudden I had to keep putting out that level of painting that I'd achieved, but times about 5, and it became very difficult to do. But when I was in London and I sold all my paintings and made a huge amount of money in the month of January, and I started to get quite kind of coy, and I started to think, oh, I've made so many £1,000s, you know, what kind of car will I buy, and all this sort of stuff, and didn't realise that you have to sustain it to kind of think like that. And I was I learned very quickly that money runs out fast. But with the Aspect Prize, I entered some more institutional exhibitions, and I won a string of awards. And things started to look really positive. I started to find it very easy to apply to galleries I had never applied to before, and found it easy to get to be made part of group shows. And then that year, my little brother Adam Kennedy, who's also an artist, applied to the last year of the Aspect Prize, and he won it. So this then kind of doubled the prestige that I had already had from the year before. Lots of people are like, are you very jealous of your brother? And I actually was quite glad that he won, because it's a bit like when you're a runner-up, it's big enough, but when you're a winner, you get so much media put on you that it can become quite overwhelming. So it was quite nice to actually be in his shadow, because I feel like even though I'm 6 years older than him, I feel like he was sort of in my shadow as well, being an artist. So it's quite nice for him to sort of take over and me to get a shot of being in his shadow. But we worked together, and we actually ended up exhibiting together, and we did a couple of shows, one of which was the Kennedy Brothers. As you can see, his work's very monochrome, mine is very colourful, and this became a really good platform for both of us. But before long, we we had basically exhausted ourselves. We were influenced to using really expensive frames, and we'd become, I think maybe it was a bit of a false sense of security, where we'd become quite elitist, or we were made to believe that we were the top of the art scene, and really we were just two young guys that had won a competition. Well, he had won and I'd become a finalist, and we hadn't learned anything about how to sustain that success and how to really kind of grow from it. So things were quite tough because we were involved with so many things, and trying to kind of get your work across and still sustain that level just became quite difficult. Anyway, just to sort of finish off the start, after all that stuff happened, my dear uncle decided to open his own gallery, and me and my brother didn't really know if this was going to be a disaster or a really successful thing. But it worked out to be a bit of both. He did very well. He opened up a gallery that actually, it turned out he had a shop that he had bought 20 years previously, and that shop happened to be the most famous gallery in Glasgow 100 years ago, and he didn't know this, and it was just a real coincidence that he happened to have that shop. So combined with the contacts that me and Adam had in his gallery, we opened up the Leaper Gallery, and the brilliant thing about this experience is it taught me everything from a gallery's point of view. So along the way, I've been exhibiting in various different exhibitions around the country, learning about it all. At this point, I had managed to kind of scrape a living out of selling paintings through galleries. Through the Aspect Prize Award, I was invited to do a lot of painting demonstrations, do a lot of teaching in museums and schools, and collectively all together I managed to kind of make enough money to still not get a job or get what people call a proper job. This whole thing became a job. But the downside of everything is everything became completely muddled up, and it became very difficult to work out how do you make a living from your painting. My painting splits into a few different categories, and for quite a long time it was always one category. But what I found out over the years is there's some things that are very important to my practice, and some things that aren't. The most important things are my statement pieces, and every year I try to do a very big kind of painting showing me at my best, so something like a really strong figurative piece, or if I'm doing an exhibition, this is from A Night of the Dogs, so I'll have a kind of almost like an icon piece for each exhibition. So I try to do something like this once a year, where I really put my heart and soul into doing one piece which just shows me at my best, and if I can just keep hitting that each year, then it keeps me happy that I'm being true to what it is that I do. So this essentially is me and what I do. But even if you do one of these a year, and even if you do sell it for the money that you try and sell it for, it's still not enough to sustain yourself. So how do you make money from being a painter? And the answer is lots of different ways. Things that I do to make money is about a list of 10 separate things here, but if I read them out, I can go through each one fairly quickly. So one of the main things that I do is pot boilers, what I call pot boilers. Pot boilers are just small paintings. So I'll do paintings like this in a short amount of time. It might be like a seabird or a puffin, or a greyhound face, and it means that somebody doesn't need to think about spending thousands. They can spend like 300, 400, whatever it is that you sell them for, and that keeps a nice little flow of money coming in. And the other thing that I do is I sell G-clay prints of my work. And this is for the people that don't have 300 or 400, but maybe have like between 50 and 200 pounds. And so what I've done is I've got these G-clay prints done, the best prints that you can actually get made of your work. I get them professionally photographed in deadly digital, and they create these, they wrap them really properly, and I sell them on my website, and that creates a nice little flow of income as well. So you can have a look at these at the end. The other thing as well is through the years I've gone with different galleries, and the main thing is when you are with galleries, you need to have a few things that work. And the first thing is they need to sell your work. It's all very well being with a gallery that you like being with, but if they never shift your paintings, then after a while it just becomes a routine of not making money. And you need to get paid on time, and that's very important. And most galleries are really good at paying you on time, and you need to be told when you sold a painting. If you're with a good gallery, they'll tell you straight away that you've sold a painting. What's not nice is when you phone to get your work back 6 months later, and you then get told that that painting actually sold, and you realise you've been needing money all this time. You could have had that money before. I try to be part of group shows as much as possible, and so I'm constantly trying to keep up with painting stock. The best way to work with galleries is to have paintings that are ready and dry, that are suitably framed. They don't need the best, most expensive frames that money can buy. They just need to have good frames that frame the painting. Frames are essentially there to protect the paintings, so as long as they're framed well, that's fine. The other thing as well is teaching. So I still do teach, but it's kind of like expanded. So I'll get called into, like, say, the Kelvin Grove Museum to do a masterclass on the Glasgow Boys. I'm very influenced by the Glasgow Boys, so I can talk quite a lot about them, or the Scottish colourists. And that usually consists of groups of school kids coming in. I'll take them round the paintings, and then take them down to the education department and show them some techniques that the Glasgow Boys have used, such as washes and glazes. Schools are something else that I teach in, but I only go in for a day at a time. I'm still very adamant about never becoming a school teacher, but it's very nice to go in and teach for a day and then leave. And it's quite funny because by the end of the day, you know all the conflicts between all the teachers, and I just think, thank goodness I never did that. Another thing that I do now is I actually teach courses up in the house, the big art house in a place called White House, which is in the Mull of Kintyre. It's voted #1 for artist holidays, and that's people that want to just have a week of living in a lovely big house and doing artwork. So the house has a huge big studio, and we go on location every day, so a different location every day, take easels and canvases and materials down to the beaches or the harbours or whatever. And if it's rainy, then we just work in the house in the big studio. The other thing that I do is if I need money for something, but I don't seem to have much money, I use my painting for trade. And so, for instance, this year I've managed to use painting to get frames and photography. So, I mean, but this can be varied. I mean, if you have a good relationship with your mechanic, I mean, you can get all sorts of things done for painting. So, or it could even be your dentist. There's all sorts of different things. People just like to get paid with art, and it's a really nice thing if you can do it. And then the last thing that I try to do every couple of years is have a solo exhibition, because it's very important that you keep showcasing yourself in the best way you can, and the best way to kind of, I see what I do very similar to being like a musician releasing an album. So group shows are like EPs, so you release like 4 or 5 paintings, and then solo shows are like an album. It's like a studio album, and it's so true. Like the very first big exhibition you have, for me it was like the Aspect Prize. I had that full 6 months and all that money to do really, really good work. And actually you should take about 1 to 2 years to do a solo show. But what tends to happen is you get opportunities and half the amount of time that you need, and you just say yes, because like me, again, you can't say no. But the brilliant thing is you get pushed to your limit to see what you can actually do, and you have to come up with something. So I try to have a good, strong exhibition every couple of years. I'll just show you some of the exhibitions that I've had in the last couple of years. So 2 years ago, just before my uncle's gallery closed, I did a night with dogs, and it was all to do with Shawfield, and it was to do with the kind of beauty and banality of greyhounds and greyhound racing. And I was there for a stag party, and rather than taking part of it and betting, I just took my camera out and really observed everything that was going on, from people buying the drinks to putting on bets, to an old drunk man waiting for his race to start, to some poor girlfriend that was dragged along, to all the guys getting ready to bet, the walkers of the dogs. So anyway, and then the last exhibition that I've had recently is 5 Days in Venice, completely different. And so this exhibition was basically what it says in the cover, 5 Days in Venice. So every time I have a solo exhibition, I try to do something completely different each time. So all that stuff together, I kind of make a living. So that's kind of how I do it anyway. Thanks very much.
Hello there. Thank you. It's quite difficult covering a second after quite a comprehensive talk. I did it completely differently. I've been going now for I've been doing my artwork for about 20 years, on and off. Yeah, with a few children in between times, but always through the kids as well. So I went to Cheltenham College of Art back in the 80s. 83 to 86, and did a printmaking degree, which I don't actually know whether they still do printmaking degrees, but it was great. So I did that, and then I went off to do postgrad in countryside management, because I wanted to go and live in the countryside, because I was born and brought up in Rochdale, which was a bit of a dump, really. So, and I liked nature, wildlife, birds. So, and I didn't touch a pencil after I finished my degree for about 6 years. I don't think I did anything. I went off and, as my mum called it, bummed around doing countryside wardening and what have you, and had a great time. And then I ended up in Orkney in '92, and ended up very quickly getting married to an Orcadian. And first kiddie came along, and I had a gallery there. So I started with the Inkstone Gallery, which was in St Margaret's Hope, while I had the kids there. And I started to do my work again. I started to do my etchings after seeing a seal swimming underwater. And I had an epiphany and went, oh my God, I must do some more work. I must get my work together again, which everybody was very pleased about, including my parents who'd forked out for my degree. So I started to work, and I also started a long time ago going to the Aviemore trade show with handmade cards, which were a lot of work. And the Aviemore trade show, I think, finished, gosh, it must have been about 15 years ago. I don't know whether any of you remember it. It was great fun. It was a very relaxed atmosphere. A lot of the Highlands and Islands people came down to Aviemore to sell their trades. It was a very exciting show because there's a lot of people. And this is a point aside that I find with the trade shows now. People are very much what's the word? They're led by trends, where I found that coming from the Highlands and Islands, people did their own thing. They weren't led by what was going on in the mainstream of creativity. They did what they wanted to do, and then they came down to the shows and they sold their work. And I found that when I started doing the trade shows, that was the prime objective, was to come down and show your work and be excited about your work. Selling it was almost secondary. I find now that it's kind of reversed, and it's all about sort of making some money and selling, rather than actually being true to yourself and making what you want to make to sell some trade shows. Having said that, I think there is a slow about turn with the trade shows. It started about the last sort of 5 years or so, when they've realised that there are a lot of people, very creative people, who aren't taking that bigger step of going to the trade shows and selling their work. So they have introduced, and I'm not following my brief here at all, I've gone opposite a tangent completely. So the Scottish trade show have introduced an aisle down the middle, which is a 2x2 metre stand that's very cheap. It's always very daunting when you go to a trade show, or people think it's very daunting to go to a trade show, but in actual fact it's actually very easy. It's very expensive, and you have to be quite prepared for the expense, because a 2x2 metre stand will be about £500 in the newbies aisle. But all you have to have is your prototypes, your finished products, one-off, that's all, or a sample of each of your products. You can give a lead time of 2 weeks, or however long, 4 weeks. Usually the Scottish show is in January, so most people don't really want the goods until Easter, the start of the summer, or that Easter trade. So you've got plenty of time to then know how much you want to order from your stockists, or make, if you're making your products, to then put them out. In 2009, I came down to Glasgow with my 2 girls and became a full-time. Well, I started as a cleaner actually. I advertised to do cleaning, and I could have been cleaning 24/7 in Glasgow, but I couldn't bear it, so I thought, right, I'm going to just take the leap and become a full-time artist. Which basically meant, because I had 2 girls to support, and without trying to sound bitter, no maintenance money, I had to be proactive, so I couldn't take the gamble of putting my work to galleries and then sitting back and hoping that they sell. I had to be proactive, so I decided to go down, carry on with the trade shows, but then I also I had greetings cards, and I wasn't hand making my cards by then. I was getting my cards printed by a company, so the samples of them are here. So I do these cards, which are my mainstay, and then I went into the coasters. This was before the coasters had sort of taken off, so it was great. I got in just at the beginning of the great coaster craze that has now begun. So I was selling these, which is great because you do your artwork and then you send it off to the printers. They scan it, and then you order it, and it comes back, and then you sell it. The only downside, of course, is you're not getting 100% profit, you're getting half the profit. So if something like that cost me 86p, I have to sell that at 140 for trade if I'm selling it to trade, and if I'm selling it retail, I sell it for 350, £4, depending on where I am. £4 in some other places. So your profit margin is reduced. So I do that, and I did nearly every weekend. Basically, I was at a show of some sort. I don't do them now, but I was at one point working every weekend. I was going to the big retail shows like Pitt and Weem Art Festival. I did Art in Action down in Cheltenham. I would travel basically all over the country, really. My poor girls very rarely saw me. They came with me, they got dragged with me. And there are a lot of single women out there dragging their kids to shows, I found out. So the thing was, and as I said, when I went to Art in Action and I was demonstrating, I do etchings, by the way, printmaking, and I was demonstrating there for 4 days, and there were art students that came along, and they were, because at Art in Action you demonstrate, they had a tent that had 7 printmakers, different types of printmakers. Then they had a painting tent and a sculpture tent, and they were all demonstrating. It was a fantastic show. It's gone now, unfortunately. As all great things come to an end. And I would say to them, they would talk to me about it, and I said, you know, when I came out of art college, I had principles. You know, it's like, oh yes, you know, we all think we're going to change the world with our artwork, but then when you have a gas bill to pay and you've got kids to support, you produce coasters. You do whatever it takes to pay the bills, and that's how I chose to do it. That's just how it sounds like I didn't enjoy it, but I really enjoyed it. I did it. I've sort of slowed down a lot now because my girls have left home and they're not needing quite so much supporting. But I did support us for the 10 years through their education, through my artwork alone. It was hard work. One of my friends nearly got thumped when she said, oh, well, at least you only work at the weekends, Louise. I was like, yeah, I sell my work at the weekends. I do all the other stuff during the week. So I didn't often get time off, but because my artwork was really what I enjoyed doing anyway, it wasn't really work. And I had a travelling van at the time, so I would go down to a show. So I did a lot of shows down in England, because actually there aren't that many big shows up in Scotland. So you have to really go down to England to do the bigger shows and some of the big gardening shows, if that's the sort of avenue you want to go down. But I would travel down, set up my stand, go and park with all the other people in the field or whatever with my van, and we would have a great time. It's like going to a festival without the music. It was great. We'd have a fire and we'd have drink and we'd have a chat and we'd catch up with how everybody's doing, and then you do the show over the weekend, and then I drove back every weekend on the Sunday. So it's good fun. It's really nice. And what I would say is that I found that I always say that money was the necessary evil. I had to make money. We all have to make money. But the feedback that I got from going to the shows and meeting the public all the time was much more important to me. I don't necessarily like, of course I like selling a piece of work at a gallery, but I don't know who's bought it. I don't know why they bought it. I don't often know who they are. I just get a check in the post. And to me, I prefer meeting the person that's bought the piece of work, and I establish a relationship with them, and they'll come back and maybe, well, I have people that buy more of work and they come to Pitt and Weem Art Festival to meet me, and they've become friends almost. So I prefer that way of working personally. It's a lot of trekking boxes and lugging stuff to venues and setting your stand up, and it is a lot of work, but at the same time it's the way that I prefer to do it. I would say that in order to do it well and for a long time, it's like 20 years, you have to be true to yourself and you have to be true to your work. You have to be totally true to what you're doing. I feel, this is only my personal opinion, and not to pander to the market. My work has never been fashionable. It's just, you know, I have my customers and they buy it. I've never become megally wealthy. I just make a living from it, and it keeps going, if that makes sense. I have tried. Sometimes I have images that I've made and I go, oh, that's cute. I did 2 sort of wee hair babies and I went, oh, that's bound to sell. That's a killer. That's just going to fly off the shelves. That is. It doesn't sell. It doesn't sell because I did it for the way I feel. I did it for the wrong reasons, and the work that I do when it comes straight from me. And people say to me, "Well, you would make much more money, Louise, if you did cats." And I'm going, "But I don't like cats. I'm a dog person. I don't like cats." So I couldn't. Yeah, I could do a cat, but it wouldn't be me doing the cat. It would be me doing a piece of work for the market. And okay, yeah, I could have made maybe I could have made more money. And someone said, "Oh, you should do pigs. Pigs are really fashionable." I don't really want to do a pig either. So my work is it kind of comes together, and I have struggled to make sets of things. You know, because when you've got coasters, people expect to buy 2 or 4 or 6. And I have people really struggling with my work, going to find a set, because my work is, although they're all the same colours, Prussian blue and I've forgotten the word of the brown that I use. So they all fit together colour-wise. The images don't necessarily always fit together, but I have learned over the years to sort of put those together. And what I would say as well is, if you are doing this kind of thing, is to standardise your sizes of your work. I learned that very late on, is that if you do an original piece of work and you intend to put it on to various products, then standardise the size so that it's a lot easier. Especially sort of things with I do the small prints of my etchings. That original etching is about sort of that size. I do the giglé prints, or as people often call them, gigglies. You get people calling them gigglies. I like that, giggly. I get these done, and so if they're all the same size, I do a standard 4x4 etching and I do a 6x4 etching. So they're much easier to send to my printers, who don't have to then resize them or anything. They just they fit straight into the frames. And I would say, just as an aside, if you're doing small things like this, I do think that the extra pence of a double mount is worth it. It gives it much more. It seems to look more valuable if you've got a double mount. I don't know why, but it works. Yes, mistakes. And I have made many mistakes. In fact, I think some mistakes didn't exist until I made them. As Paul said, you come out of art college and they don't teach you anything. You know, they don't teach you how to sell your work. And I've had to learn the very long, hard way, because as my accountant once said to me, and I took it as a compliment, she said, "You do extremely well, Louise, considering you're blatantly not a businesswoman." And I went, "I never wanted to be a businesswoman. I just wanted to sell my work. I just wanted to make my work, and I wanted to sell it. I didn't want to make a living out of it particularly. You know, I didn't want to support my 2 girls solely from my art, because it then becomes, it becomes a job. It's not necessarily, you know, what we all want to do, but it is our job." I would say, and the other thing I would say is that I like to say that I have lots of lily pads to jump about on. So I do the greetings cards, I do the coasters, I do the framed works, I do A4 prints of my work. I've got the chalkboards that have now come out, and the pegboards, these things that now my company makes for me, and then I sell. I'm kind of short on stock at the minute, but that's an original etching. So because they're etchings, I do an edition. So I have an edition of each original print as well. So I do sell those to galleries too. So basically, I have a ball in almost every court, and but I have a very low boredom threshold too, so it keeps me from getting bored. And I did actually, when Gemma press ganged me into doing this, I sent out to Facebook an SOS to a site called Art Fair Buddies, and I sort of said to them, because I feel that the trade show selling has changed a lot over the last 20 years, which is why I'm kind of pulling out of it, and now I only do the Scottish one. I used to do 5 trade shows in a year, 4 of them down in England. And then the one at the Scottish trade show. I even used to go down to Exeter and do the one down in Exeter in January, which was great because you get all the Cornish, South Coast places down there. But I sent out an SS saying, I feel like I was out of touch, and people, did you think that the way of selling to trade is changing? Are trade shows dying? Do we still need them? And has the internet taken over? Which is what a lot of us are feeling. And the first reply that I got was from a lady, these are all good questions and I wish I knew the answers. So it wasn't very helpful. But basically, I think people were saying that the trade shows are okay, they're still surviving. They are going through a transitionary period, I think. And a lot of the people that responded said that it's okay for established people like myself, but the newbies are really suffering, or are struggling quite hard to break into what is, quite frankly, quite a flooded market now. With the advent of, when I first started doing these things and the greetings cards, you had to order them by the 1,000. So you had to be really committed that you were going to be selling these things. Now you can go to Imaging Centre and have 25 cards printed, and so there's no great outlay. So a lot more people are doing it. So it's quite a competitive market to get into now. And they were saying that a lot of them now they're using Etsy Noths, which is not on the high street. They're still doing the face-to-face, and they're finding stockists through going to markets, through going to fairs, Christmas markets. So I think that a lot of the thought was that we can just survive on maybe the internet. A lot of people thought that they could just survive on that, but I feel that you can't just survive on your website and on the internet. I think to keep going properly, I think you do have to go out there and you do have to meet your public. How many times you do that is probably up to yourselves. But a lot of people I find, when you go to a show now, they'll pick up your business card with your website on it. They won't necessarily buy it from you at the show. They'll go away and then a couple of days later you'll get an email, or they'll buy something from your website. Other than that, I don't really know. I can answer questions one-to-one, but it's a good way of making a living, and I wouldn't have done it any other way. I've met lots of really, really interesting people, and some of the most ordinary looking people come out with some of the most amazing stuff. I don't believe. And I learned a lot of things along the way. You know, never judge a person by how they look, because they'll just come out with something, and you think, we all stand there and go, oh, this person's not going to buy anything. They've not got any money. They don't get money. And then they come and they'll buy, they'll pull out 300 quid or something, and because they really want your one. So you never know. you never know who comes along. And personally, I really, really, really enjoyed the way that I made my living out of my work. So, thank you very much.